Just 36 seconds. One shocking comment would shatter the pleasantries and turn a friendly chat into the most explosive exit in daytime television history. Make sure to hit that subscribe button right now, because we're pulling back the curtain on royalty's dark side, exposing entitled celebrities and their shocking behavior the cameras never showed you. We've got the raw footage they don't want you to see, and you won't want to miss a single reveal. Drop a comment and let us know your thoughts on this outrageous behavior. It started like any other morning on the show. The studio lights were warm, the audience was buzzing with excitement, and Lorraine Kelly sat ready in her signature chair, wearing that genuine smile that had made her a household name for decades. She'd interviewed thousands of guests over her career, from Hollywood A-listers to everyday heroes, and she always brought the same warmth and professionalism to every single conversation. When Meghan Markle walked onto the set, the audience erupted in applause. She was wearing an expensive designer outfit, the kind that costs more than most people earn in months. Her heels clicked against the studio floor with an almost deliberate sharpness. She didn't wave to the audience. She didn't smile at the crew. She simply walked to her seat with an expression that seemed to say she was doing everyone a favor by being there. Lorraine stood up to greet her guest, extending her hand with that trademark warmth. "Welcome to the show. It's absolutely lovely to have you here today." Meghan shook her hand briefly, barely making eye contact. "Thank you for having me," she said, her voice flat and devoid of any real enthusiasm. They both sat down, and Lorraine jumped right in, trying to establish that comfortable rapport she was famous for creating. "Now, you've been quite busy lately. I'd love to hear about the projects you're working on. I know our viewers are really interested in what you've been up to." Meghan shifted in her seat, crossing her legs and leaning back as if she owned the place. "Well, Lorraine, I'm working on several initiatives that are very important to me. Things that actually matter in the world, you know? Things that make a real difference, not just fluff pieces for morning television." The smile on Lorraine's face flickered for just a moment, but she recovered like the professional she was. "Of course, and we'd love to hear all about those important causes. Perhaps you could tell us about—" "I think what people don't understand," Meghan interrupted, not even letting Lorraine finish her question, "is that when you reach a certain level of influence, you have responsibilities, real responsibilities. Not everyone can comprehend that." Lorraine nodded politely, though anyone watching closely could see her processing this unexpected tone. "Absolutely, and I think our audience would really connect with hearing about how you—" "Your audience?" Meghan cut in again, emphasizing the word "your" in a way that felt almost condescending. "I'm sure they're lovely people, but do they really understand the complexities of global humanitarian work? Do they grasp what it means to operate on an international stage?" The studio had gone noticeably quieter. Even the camera operators seemed to sense the tension building. Lorraine maintained her composure, that professional smile still in place, though it had become a bit more fixed. "Well, I think you might be surprised. Our viewers are incredibly informed and engaged with." "I'm not trying to be rude," Meghan said in that tone people use when they're absolutely about to be rude. "But there's a difference between watching morning talk shows and actually living the life I live. The scrutiny, the pressure, the constant demands. It's not something most people could handle." Lorraine's eyebrows raised slightly. "I see. Well, I've been doing this show for many years, and I can tell you that our viewers come from all walks of life. We've got doctors, teachers, charity workers." "Yes, but have they dealt with the kind of media intrusion I've dealt with?" Meghan leaned forward now, her voice taking on an edge. "Have they had their every move analyzed, their every word twisted? I somehow doubt your average viewer sitting at home with their morning tea has experienced anything remotely comparable to my situation." The audience was dead silent now. You could have heard a pin drop in that studio. Lorraine's Scottish warmth was being tested in ways that viewers had never seen before. She took a breath, clearly choosing her next words carefully. "I think many people face their own challenges," Lorraine said gently but firmly. "Different circumstances, certainly, but real struggles nonetheless. That's actually one of the things that makes human connection so." "Connection?" Meghan laughed, but it wasn't a warm laugh. It was sharp, almost mocking. "Lorraine, respectfully, what connection could there possibly be between my life and someone working a 9-to-5 job? It's not the same universe." Lorraine's smile had completely faded now, her jaw tightened ever so slightly. "I'm not sure I understand what you're suggesting. Are you saying that people with ordinary jobs can't relate to?" "I'm saying that there are levels to this," Meghan interrupted yet again. "There are people who matter on a global scale, and then there are people who, well, live smaller lives, and that's fine. Not everyone can be extraordinary. Some people are meant to be audience members, not the main event. The gasps from the studio audience were audible now. Lorraine sat up straighter in her chair, and for the first time in the interview, her voice took on a steel edge that regular viewers almost never heard. "I'm sorry, but I have to stop you there," Lorraine said, her Scottish accent becoming more pronounced as it always did when she was truly bothered. "Are you actually sitting on my show, in front of this audience, and suggesting that people are somehow lesser because they're not famous?" Meghan waved her hand dismissively. "That's not what I said. You're twisting my words, which, I have to say, is exactly the kind of thing I was warned about. The British media always does this." "I'm not twisting anything," Lorraine replied, her voice steady but firm. "You just said that some people live smaller lives and are meant to be audience members rather than the main event. Those were your exact words." "Context matters, Lorraine," Meghan shot back, her voice rising. "You're deliberately misunderstanding me because it makes better television, isn't it? This is exactly the problem. This is why doing interviews like this is so exhausting. No one actually listens." Lorraine leaned forward, looking directly at her guest. "I am listening. Everyone here is listening. And what we're hearing is quite frankly shocking. These people, this audience, they've taken time out of their day to be here. The viewers at home have tuned in because they wanted to hear from you, and you're sitting here insulting them." "I haven't insulted anyone." Meghan's voice was getting louder now, her composure slipping. "This is typical. I come on here to discuss important work, and instead I'm being attacked." "You're not being attacked," Lorraine said calmly, though her eyes flashed with something viewers had never quite seen before. "You're being called out for making disparaging comments about ordinary, hardworking people. There's a difference." Meghan stood up abruptly, her microphone pack nearly pulling off her outfit. "I don't have to sit here and be spoken to like this. Do you know who I am? Do you have any idea the kind of platform I have?" Lorraine remained seated, looking up at her guest with a mixture of disbelief and disappointment. "I know exactly who you are, and right now what I'm seeing is someone who's forgotten that fame doesn't make you more valuable than anyone else." "This is unbelievable," Meghan said, her voice shaking with anger. "I've done interviews with the biggest names in American television, people who actually understand how to conduct themselves professionally, and I've never been treated like this." "Perhaps," Lorraine said quietly, "those interviewers didn't challenge you when you said things that needed challenging." Meghan's face flushed red. "You know what? I'm done here. This is beneath me. This entire show is beneath me." She reached up and yanked off her microphone, the sound making a loud pop through the studio speakers. The crew members looked at each other, unsure of what to do. This had never happened before, not in all the years of the show's history. "I have never," Meghan continued, her voice getting higher and more strained, "been so disrespected in my entire life. The level of unprofessionalism here is absolutely astounding." Lorraine stood up now, her full height surprisingly commanding despite her petite frame. Her voice was calm, measured, but absolutely unwavering. "Meghan, you walked onto this show and insulted our audience. You suggested that people with normal jobs live smaller, less important lives. You dismissed the very people who support this program and who, frankly, have supported you throughout your career. If anyone has been unprofessional here, I'm afraid it isn't me." "How dare you," Meghan hissed. "How absolutely dare you speak to me that way?" "I'm speaking to you," Lorraine replied, her voice still steady. "The same way I would speak to anyone who came onto my show and behaved this way. You're not special. You're not above basic respect and decency." Meghan grabbed her handbag from beside the chair, her hands shaking with rage. "You have no idea what you've just done. No idea. The consequences of this." "The consequences," Lorraine interrupted, and this time she was the one doing it, "are that you've shown your true colors. And I think that's actually quite valuable for people to see." "I'm leaving," Meghan announced, as if this wasn't already abundantly clear. "And you can be absolutely certain that my team will be in touch. This is not over." Lorraine crossed her arms, standing firm. "The door is right there. And Meghan, before you go, I just want you to know something. Every single person in this studio, every crew member, every audience member, every viewer at home, they all have value. They all matter. Their lives aren't smaller or less important because they're not famous. That's not how the world works, no matter how much you seem to think it does." Meghan's mouth opened and closed, as if she was searching for a devastating comeback but couldn't find one. Her face was scarlet now, whether from anger or embarrassment, it was impossible to tell. Finally, she just shook her head and said, "You'll regret this." "I don't think I will," Lorraine replied simply, and with that, Meghan Markle turned on her expensive heels and stormed off the set. The click of her shoes echoed through the silent studio as she disappeared through the exit. The door slammed behind her with a sound that seemed to reverberate through the entire building. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The audience sat frozen, processing what they'd just witnessed. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of the aftermath. Lorraine stood there, her arms still crossed, watching the door where her guest had just made her dramatic exit. Then, slowly, someone in the audience started clapping. Then, another person joined in. Then another. Within seconds, the entire studio audience was on their feet, applauding. Not the polite, measured applause that usually filled the studio, but thunderous, enthusiastic, genuine appreciation. Lorraine looked out at the audience, and for the first time since Meghan had walked off, her expression softened. She smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes. She raised her hand in a small wave, acknowledging the support. "Well," she said, once the applause had died down enough for her to be heard, "that was certainly unexpected." The audience laughed, breaking the tension that had filled the room moments before. Lorraine walked back to her chair and sat down, smoothing her skirt and taking a visible breath. She looked directly into the camera, speaking to the viewers at home with that same warmth and authenticity that had made her such a beloved figure. "You know," she said, her voice thoughtful, "I've been doing this job for a very long time. I've interviewed thousands of people, and I've always believed that everyone deserves respect. Everyone. It doesn't matter if you're a member of the royal family or if you're working 3 jobs to make ends meet. It doesn't matter if you have millions of followers or if you're just trying to get through the day. Every single person has value." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "What you just saw there, that was someone who's lost sight of something fundamental. Fame, status, wealth, none of those things make you better than anyone else. They don't give you the right to look down on people or dismiss their lives as somehow less important than yours." The audience was hanging on every word. You could feel the energy in the room, the collective sense that they'd witnessed something significant, something real. "I love doing this show," Lorraine continued, "because I get to talk to all kinds of people. Some of them are famous, sure, but some of them are just extraordinary, ordinary people doing amazing things. And you know what? The latter group are often far more interesting, far more genuine, and far more inspiring than the former." She leaned forward, her elbows on her knees, speaking conversationally as if she were chatting with friends over coffee. "I think what bothered me most about that conversation wasn't even the insults directed at me. I can handle that. What bothered me was the casual dismissal of you, the audience, and everyone watching at home. The suggestion that your lives are somehow smaller or less meaningful because you're not living in the public eye." Lorraine shook her head, a slight smile playing at her lips. "That's not just wrong, it's absurd. Some of the most incredible, most impactful, most beautiful lives being lived right now are being lived by people you've never heard of and never will hear of. People who show up every day and do their best. People who love their families, support their friends, contribute to their communities. That's not small. That's everything." The audience erupted in applause again, and this time Lorraine let it wash over her, accepting it with grace. When it quieted down, she continued, "I'm not going to apologize for calling that behavior out. I'm not going to apologize for standing up for all of you, because that's what this show has always been about. It's about celebrating people, all people, and recognizing that we all have our struggles, our triumphs, our stories worth telling." She sat back in her chair, that familiar twinkle returning to her eye. "Now, I do believe we have a show to continue. We've got some wonderful guests lined up, people who actually want to be here and who actually respect this audience. So let's shake that off and get back to what we do best." The audience laughed and clapped, the mood lifting considerably. The production team moved quickly to reset, adjusting cameras and checking sound levels. Lorraine took a sip of water from the mug on her desk, the one with the funny slogan that regular viewers would recognize. As the commercial break approached, Lorraine looked into the camera one more time. "Before we go to break, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being here, thank you for watching, and thank you for being exactly who you are. You don't need anyone's validation, least of all from someone who clearly has some thinking to do about what really matters in life." The camera zoomed in on her face, capturing that warm, genuine expression that had made her a staple of morning television for so many years. "We'll be right back with some guests who are actually going to make your day better, I promise you that." As they cut to commercial, the studio buzzed with excited chatter. Audience members turned to each other, rehashing what they'd just seen. still processing the shock of it all. Crew members gathered in small groups, shaking their heads in disbelief. The makeup artist rushed over to Lorraine to touch up her face before the next segment, and even she couldn't help commenting. "That was incredible," she whispered. "I've worked on this show for 8 years, and I've never seen anything like that." Lorraine smiled tiredly. "Neither have I, and hopefully we never will again." The floor manager counted them down from the commercial break. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The red light on the camera blinked on, and Lorraine was immediately back in professional mode, that warmth and energy flooding back into her face. "Welcome back," she said cheerfully. "Now, after that rather unexpected start to our show, I'm delighted to introduce our next guest, who represents everything I love about this program." And just like that, she moved on, because that's what professionals do. They don't dwell. They don't make drama where it doesn't need to exist. They simply do their job with grace and integrity. Throughout the rest of the show, Lorraine was her usual self, warm, funny, engaged, asking thoughtful questions, and actually listening to the answers. Every now and then, an audience member would catch her eye and smile, a knowing look passing between them. They'd all shared something that morning, something unexpected and oddly unifying. During the cooking segment, when the celebrity chef made a joke about demanding guests, Lorraine laughed genuinely and said, "Oh, don't get me started." The audience roared with laughter, and even the chef looked pleased to be part of the inside joke. The fashion segment went smoothly, with a lovely designer showing off her new collection inspired by working women. "These are for the women who do everything," the designer explained. "The ones juggling careers and families, the ones who don't have teams of people dressing them every day but still want to feel confident and beautiful." Lorraine touched the fabric appreciatively. "That's exactly the audience we're talking to. Real women, living real lives, and they're absolutely magnificent." The designer smiled. "I heard what happened earlier. I just want to say, you were brilliant. Someone needed to say those things." Lorraine deflected graciously. "Let's focus on your gorgeous designs. Tell me about this piece here." But throughout the show, despite her professionalism, you could sense that something had shifted. There was an energy in the studio, a feeling that they'd all stood up for something important. They defended the idea that every person matters, that no one is inherently better than anyone else, and that basic human decency isn't negotiable, no matter who you are. When the show finally wrapped, after the cameras stopped rolling and the audience had been thanked and dismissed, Lorraine sat in her chair for a moment, alone on the quiet set. She looked around at the familiar surroundings, the place where she'd spent so many hours of her life, having conversations that ranged from deeply serious to delightfully silly. A producer approached, tablet in hand, looking concerned. "We're already getting calls from journalists wanting statements. Social media is going absolutely mental. This is going to be everywhere." Lorraine stood up, stretching her back. "I'm sure it will be, but I meant every word I said. I'm not taking anything back. No one's asking you to," the producer said quickly. "Actually, the response has been overwhelmingly supportive. People are praising you for standing up to her." "I wasn't standing up to her specifically," Lorraine corrected gently. "I was standing up for the principle that everyone deserves respect. She just happened to be the one who needed to hear it." The producer nodded. "Well, either way, you've struck a nerve. In a good way. People are saying it's the most authentic moment they've seen on daytime television in years." Lorraine gathered her notes in her mug, preparing to head to her dressing room. "Authenticity isn't hard when you genuinely care about people. That's all it was. I care about this audience. I care about our viewers. And I wasn't going to sit there and let someone diminish them." As she walked off the set, she passed crew members who gave her thumbs up and appreciative nods. The audience coordinator caught her in the hallway. "Just so you know, the audience members are still out there, and they're all talking about how much they love you. Several of them said this was the best episode they've ever attended." Lorraine smiled. "That's lovely to hear, though I wish the circumstances had been different." "Maybe," the coordinator said thoughtfully, "but maybe people needed to see that. Needed to see someone in your position standing up for the everyday person. It matters more than you might think." In her dressing room, Lorraine finally allowed herself to fully process what had happened. She sat down at her makeup station, looking at her reflection in the mirror surrounded by lights. She looked tired, which made sense. Confrontation wasn't her natural state. She'd built her career on warmth and connection, not conflict. But sometimes, she thought, confrontation was necessary. Sometimes standing up for what's right meant getting uncomfortable. It meant saying things that others might find controversial. It meant drawing a line and defending it. Her phone, which had been silenced during the show, was now lighting up with notifications. Messages of support from colleagues, friends, other television personalities, even a few celebrities who'd been guests on her show over the years were reaching out to say they'd seen clips online and were proud of her. One message in particular caught her eye. It was from a veteran journalist she deeply respected. "You did what needed to be done. You reminded everyone that decency matters. Well done." Lorraine set her phone down and took a deep breath. Tomorrow, there would be more conversations, more reactions, possibly more drama. But right now, in this quiet moment, she felt at peace with her choices. She'd done her job. She'd protected her audience. She'd stood up for the values that had guided her throughout her entire career. And if that meant becoming part of a dramatic story herself, well, so be it. Because at the end of the day, what mattered wasn't fame or status or connections. What mattered was treating people with respect, recognizing the inherent worth in every person,